Okay, the next game we're going to be talking about is Echo the Dolphin, which was nominated by @YoungestSteve on Twitter. It was developed by Novatrade Software, published by Sega for the Sega Genesis or Sega Master Gear.
Did you say the Sega Master Gear?
I'm sorry, not Master Gear. Mega Drive.
There we go. I'm like,
yeah,
I didn't
sorry.
know that one, but it sounds awesome.
I think it's an emulator. Is there an emulator called Master Gear? There's like a Master System Game Gear emulator.
There probably is, but I don't know if there's one specifically called that.
All right, anyway. Developed by Novatrade Software, published by Sega for the Sega Genesis or Sega Mega Drive. Its earliest release date and territory is July 30th, 1993. I'm assuming for North America. But I'm not 100%. I'm pretty sure it came out in North America first, right?
Pretty sure.
It did come out in the Western-speaking Western society places.
Western,
before
I
Japan.
speak Western. Yeah,
Japan
okay,
was
good.
led. Yeah, you've got... Yeah, I'm not going to go off on a language trade. Yes.
Yeah. So, Echo the Dolphin, I mean, this is an interesting game. Historically speaking, it's one of those... This is one of the first, I would say, high-concept games.
It's very much one of the first high-concept games to also come out of a proper team with money and a budget and released on physical cartridges for a system. Because you have some very odd games, especially on like the ZX Spectrum or whatever. I think Commodore 64 has a game called Moondust, and there's Deus Ex Machina, I think, and that might have been on. Those games are really out
Mine
there.
Forever Voyaging, like that references a Alexander Pope poem, so that's probably about as high concept as it gets. But yeah, I mean, for a console game, it's super high concept, and this was a big deal. If you've read Console Wars by what's his name, Blake Harris, is that the guy's name? Seems to get a lot of crap for doing a historical narrative style book where it's like he interviewed the people involved but made it into a story, and therefore it's not 100% accurate, and people hate it for that reason. I don't get that.
We hate a lot of things for no reason, especially in games. We just hate things.
I hate
business.
games. You know what else I hate? Game podcasts. Those suck.
I really think I hate games. Let's do a podcast. That's gaming 101.
I hate games. The podcast. I mean, it's a great game. Console Wars is it's a great book, and they talk about how Echo the Dolphin was like a cause célèbre, if I pronounced that correctly, in the early 90s, because people knew about this. It was being developed, and it was being shown around, and people were it's a dolphin game, and like dolphins were never bigger than they were in the 90s.
And how I grew up loving dolphins, and that must be why.
I like them because they're almost as smart as people, and they smell better. The Echo the Dolphin, it's a very environmentalist kind of game, like a 90s environmentalist type thing. Like nowadays we're so close to like completely ruining the planet that environmentalist doesn't really work as a thing, because we can't actually save the environment. We
tried really hard to save the
bleeding.
environment in games, and we didn't try hard enough in real life.
But back in the 90s, there was still this dream that you could actually stop the damage to the planet.
Thanks for nothing, Ted Turner.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
He tried.
But anyway, this game has one of the craziest first stages, maybe the best first stage, like in terms of
this game goes from
visual
about
storytelling ever.
like 1 to lifetime of nightmares in about 20 seconds in the
It's
intro
incredible.
of this game.
You're a dolphin swimming around in an idyllic Arcadia, an ocean Arcadia, just having a great old time and being happy, and you're with your ocean-going friends. And
Boy, Echo, it sure is a wonderful day.
yeah, it's a great time to be alive. It's a fantastic time to be an ocean-faring mammal. Check out my blowhole; it's pristine. And and then suddenly something terrible happens. I'm sure I learned what happened, but I never really understood why. But basically,
You're not
it's
really
just
supposed to pick up what exactly is happening at this stage of the
everything
experience.
flies out of the ocean, and the ocean turns scary. Is what happens.
And can I also say that it's probably the second scariest collection of sounds on a 16-bit machine, only losing out narrowly to Lavos in Chrono Trigger. Like the sound effect is just like screeching. The only the Yamaha on the Mega Drive could reproduce this metallic shriek as dolphins and ocean life are ripped out of the ocean, and then the music just dead stops and it just goes super creepy, and you're just like, what the hell has happened?
Yeah, it feels like it messes with the player's expectations in a way. Like usually in this time period, when you have a game that starts out in like a happy place, the whole game is happy place. And even like Sonic the Hedgehog starts out really happy, even though there's like animals who have been enslaved and cocooned inside of killer robots and stuff. Like when you defeat the killer robots, the little happy animals bounce away.
This is more like Monster Party when you pass a giant tree in the first level. Maybe not quite that extreme, but pretty close.
No. Bobinator, take credit for that, Bob. That is perfect. Perfect analogy. You played Monster Party where you're just walking along, and after you pass a certain point, suddenly the world goes crazy, and everything's like bleeding and gross and terrible. It's kind of like that in Ecco the Dolphin, and it's a crazy game. It's the kind of game that just it's its own kind of game. You know, it
really is. When I came thinking about this game, it was just everything this game is. You really, I can't think of another game that quite does it. Like, it's not a platformer. It's like a pseudo exploration platformer, but you're actually a dolphin, so that you play as a dolphin and it controls like a dolphin.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, it's so weird and so unusual, the control, but it feels intuitive. That's the thing, is when you're playing it, you know what it actually controls like in a weird way? The closest you could get to this in terms of like the feel of like moving through water is Wave Race 64.
Right, because in some ways, because it's a 2D side view game, but you do control Echo more like he's a top-down sort of character.
Yeah, you're moving through water like it's actual fluid. That's the amazing thing. It's not that the character moves differently. It's that the character moves through the environment as if it's not like Defender where you're moving through like just space or any other shoot 'em up.
Yeah, you can feel your inertia as best as a 16-bit machine could sort of emulate a feeling of moving through water and slowing down, and that energy of pushing in water. You feel that when you move in this game.
And once you jump out of the water and jump up, like, you don't have the same movement ability. That's the weird thing that people don't really think about because it's so intuitive, but it's true.
Right, you just become on like a fixed track. Like, you're now just you're stuck. You're vulnerable in the air.
It's just like being a dolphin and jumping out of like the the water, which I understand because I've been a dolphin a few times in my life, and it's a beautiful but terrifying experience. A splendid yet terrible adventure.
Especially when it happens in college.
It's weird how that always happens. It's like it just coincides with experimenting with mind-expanding drugs. No, I mean...
That reminds me of... I'm not sure if any of you have seen that one video Guru Larry did a while back, but this game has an interesting development story with it.
It's really incredible. Like, go ahead. Why don't you enlighten us?
I'm trying to remember the details, and I might be completely wrong on this, but I think if I remember right, the game's story was inspired by some experiments people were doing with dolphins, where they actually gave the dolphins drugs to see what would happen.
There is some weird history with that, and there were a lot of dolphin experiments in that same sort of living with apes experiments, where it's just like, this is the worst possible way to approach scientific progress, but we're gonna do it because we don't care. Yeah, there was...
Well, did they kill the animals? I think not.
No, I think they wanted to really see whether, they were testing the dolphins' mental abilities.
Let's get the dolphins high. If there was... like, that to me is the apex of science. Like, let's just get the dolphins high. How do we do that? That, just the logistics of that alone deserves a Nobel Prize.
But I will say that does actually carry into how... sort of how well this game basically conjures up the atmosphere that it exists in. This is a very unnerving game in that if you are, and I don't know what the phobia of being underwater or being deep underwater would be called, other than maybe being a normal person, but boy, when this game gets going and you're just deep underwater and you are surrounded by just almost unknowable like creatures and just it's so much pressure on you. Just like, oh god, I got to get to the air because I'm gonna freaking die down here, and it's really
That's the craziest thing is that it's a game about dolphins, and in any other game, if you're like you're a dolphin, that would mean that you get to swim forever, and it doesn't matter, and there are no consequences to what you do. Not in this game.
no.
Dolphins are mammals, so they have to hold their breath, and this
Sorry.
game does something with that.
Yeah, and that's that. It's got really fantastic sort of takes like, oh, what should our like health system be? You have to eat fish to get your health back, and you have to find the fish by using your echolocation ability to physically find fish on the map, to then eat the fish to get your health back, and you've got to find pockets of air, and it's like that's like that approach is very different for most games, and I don't think that many games today still use like they don't use that either. This is a very, I don't know, it's not intuitive, but it's like,
Well,
you know,
it's too stressful. Yeah, I mean, it's not intuitive because we don't deal with that issue in our own lives, but it is kind of like, I mean, well, you know, like Minecraft, for instance, has like a hunger mechanic, and it's got, you know, when you go underwater, it's got an oxygen mechanic type thing. But it's not really the same because you run out of oxygen and stuff so fast. But to build an entire game around, and, oh well, also we you know we might as well mention Sonic the Hedgehog has a lot of underwater stuff where you need to get air.
well, I think this game is somewhat close to Sonic the Hedgehog in that they both present, and I don't want to say Sonic the Hedgehog presents the feeling of being a hedgehog because that doesn't really work. But the way Sonic moves and acts is very interesting. You know, I said like, you know, he's very physics heavy. You know, you can spin in the ball form, and then you roll off hills and become virtually a pinball in a lot of ways.
Right.
And in the same way that Echo is this kind of odd creature that actually feels like a certain thing. You don't feel like a person in Echo. You never feel like a human. You don't feel like a bipedal creature. You feel like a dolphin, and it's weird.
But I don't think it feels that weird. I feel like you feel like a dolphin. You feel like, finally, I'm a dolphin. That's all I wanted out of life. I'm a dolphin.
But then as a
feels
dolphin,
natural. It feels good. It feels liberating. But but it's actually way more confining than the average game of this era, or definitely more confining than the average game. Period.
well, also
because
because then it
limitations it places
becomes
on the
a
character.
like terrifying nightmare piece of difficulty where this thing is just really hard, and you have to make your way through labyrinths and giant sea creatures that will murder the hell out of you, and then you have to go back in time. You go through underwater ruins, and all this time you are just a vulnerable little dolphin, and it is just, help, I'm going to die down here.
How does I mean, so can you describe the game's story for those who haven't played it?
It's surprisingly deep from what I remember.
It presents itself quite well in that it does use language. It does talk to you. It doesn't stick purely to any sort of like only visual storytelling. You can talk to different non-aggressive sea creatures and random crystals that are strewn around. I think there is a reason why the crystals are strewn around. I can't remember if aliens built them or something, but they're there. Don't try and think too hard about that.
Magic.
But basically, Echo is somehow doesn't get sucked up into the space vacuum, and so he's like, what happened to my pod? So he goes and gets sent to different aquatic creatures, and they're like, well, this has happened before, go talk to the big whale. So you gotta go find the big whale, and then you sort of unravel this thing where it turns out Echo has to go back in time to get a superpower. This really happens though. This plot, Echo actually goes back in time using essentially an ancient time machine to then go back in time and collect something before the civilization that built the time machine or something ceased to exist, to get the power to then go back into the future to get actually sucked up into the vortex to defeat the terrifying xenomorphic alien monsters that have sucked up the ocean to basically destroy them. And that's the whole plot of Echo. And
What's their point?
you don't expect
in,
that
sucking
when you
up
put it in the car.
all the life in the ocean. Are they going to turn them into like granola bars or something? Like what are they doing with
I think
it?
that's heavily implied.
So the aliens are really us.
Yeah, I think that there is a... If you wanted to go in an environmental direction, then yes, we are definitely the bad guys.
They
in
really
this,
should have done that.
context.
They really should have just made like the bad guys like Jacques
just like a
Cousteau or
like a
Steve
like a
Zissou
fat guy
or-
wearing a cowboy hat kind of deal, just like at last I can eat the dolphin steaks.
Yeah, so good.
It should be like Scooby-Doo where you unmask the aliens. They're just corporate executives or
You
something.
pull off the alien. Oh my God! It was fat human all along.
Curse you, Echo. But yeah, no, like the game is told over a series of very thematic levels with pretty cool names that really describe what the
And
levels
the music is incredible. The music
are.
is
Boy,
so good.
is it wonderful! Like, basically, you have two soundtracks. So I'll quickly spin off here because there is the sort of Genesis Mega Drive original soundtrack. And then they also released this game a little bit later for the Sega CD, Mega CD, and Windows, and a couple other things. And so they actually made a Red Book soundtrack for that, which is a bit more new agey, but also just very good, like really cool, like just general music. But the original soundtrack is more sort of just slightly surreal, atmospheric, but very, very like great stuff. Like just
It's incredible. I mean, I would say
evocative, I guess is the best word I could throw at it.
evocative, right? I would say like it's interesting because in 2 episodes ago, in episode 50, we talked about possibly one of the best Genesis Mega Drive games ever, which was Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, if you want to count that as a single game. And this is like, I feel like that is on a very short list of Mega Drive games that you've got to play. And in terms of like games that you just don't get anywhere else, and Echo is maybe number 2.
All right,
there's
all
no
right.
substitute for Echo.
Hang on here. I've been staying quiet throughout this entire discussion.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sit back and hear what everyone said about the good points about this game. So I'm going to come in and play the heel, because I'm going to assert that I am really not a fan of Echo at all, and I might even go so far to say, in my humble opinion, it's the most overrated game on the Genesis.
I want to hear you explain this.
Well, you mentioned the difficulty some ways back there, right? I'm all for a challenging game, but this one is just so aggravating to play that I feel most of the other merits that this game has are moot. I don't know if I just suck, but I don't
Yes.
think a lot of people are going to disagree that this game is really frustrating, and I don't mean in a you make this mistake and you learn from it way. I mean in a this game wants to kill you and not let you win way. I'm sorry, I just got such a hostile, oppressive atmosphere to it that I just felt like this game wanted me to screw off. I mean, and I feel, honestly, that the controls are... I never really got used to the controls. I find them kind of loose. And, I mean, the inertia there I could see was kind of the point, but I wish there was a little more precision trying to navigate through all these narrow pathways teeming with all these spiky crustaceans and all these, like, jackasses just keep coming out of nowhere. I mean,
Echo has like 3 different speeds of movement. Were you utilizing all of those, or were you just flinging yourself down corridors? 'Cause
when I was
it is-
using the slow speed, I'd fucking run out of oxygen.
yeah,
so-
that's the pressure.
So I never really got used to how you move in this game. Like, I know it's somewhat realistic to the inertia that you experience underwater as a dolphin, but, like, I just felt all my movements were really imprecise, and, like, all the times the game requires you to jump out of the water and just try and angle yourself the right way. I mean, this game really just did not mesh with me. I just found it hard to really get a grasp of. Like, he turned too slowly, and I never like how when you do Echo's charge, he has a delay to it unless you're already moving, and that just feels kind of sloppy to me. I'm just not a fan of how it plays. Look, maybe it's a little harsh to call it the most overrated game for the Genesis, but it's probably the one that people like the most that I, in comparison, like the least. So,
I will say, like, I don't know if sloppy is the right word, because I don't... When it comes to the controls of Echo, I would say the whole thing feels very deliberate. Like, I don't... In the sense that this is how they clearly wanted Echo to play and move. I can understand, like, if you don't gel with the way that they made the controls, that's going to be an issue. That's...
Yeah, I have seen that this game is really love it or hate it, and, I mean, you're not wrong for a good chunk of the praise. I mean, it sounds good, and it does look good, although I do feel
fantastic.
I will have to criticize something about the graphics, though. the area where you're in for the first several levels, like that rocky that rocky oceanscape with the dark blue background, that the game looks like that for like the first 5 or 6 levels, and there's almost no change until you like get to the past or whatever. And even so, they still reuse that background in some more levels afterwards. So I felt like even there was a little bit of lack in the design. I mean, it technically looks nice, but I just wish there was more variety sooner.
There's slight variety depending on the part of the area. They do change the rocks a couple of times, or at least like there is some slight editing. The past is definitely different because they swapped the palette of the rocks to brown, I think. But before that, you've got the incredibly beautiful crystal stage, which is just
I will admit, that one looks really great and more than what you'd expect from the Genesis. So
and there's the Colosseum and the sort of rundown like underwater ruins is definitely different from the thing. But I do get that it's not that there are things. Those rocks though, and I will rarely, if ever, tell you that rocks are really nice. But Ecco has literally the best rocks in any 16-bit game, and I will fight people in real life on that point. That it is.
They look good. I just wish that stuff that you mentioned came earlier in the game, or even that good chunk of the earlier stages were even cut out. I mean, okay, here's the thing. Ed Annunziata, the director of the game, I'll post this for your guys' benefit, but he made this post on Twitter where he was afraid the game would be beaten, like, really quickly, and that kids would just, not regard it very well. So he really deliberately jacked up the difficulty in order for it to be so difficult that no one's going to beat it right away. Well, I don't think he did a little too well, because I don't think most people are going to beat it at all. I am all for lowering the difficulty just as long as the game is palpable. I mean, but it's the way it is now. I have two
points to that, which would be so he has gone on record and said he made it too hard. I think that the only thing in this game that I would say is objectively too hard
Welcome to the machine.
Welcome to the machine. It's a 6 or 7 minute gauntlet of the hardest maneuvering, toughest stuff that this game can throw at you. And the game doesn't have checkpoints. Okay, so if you lose...
Yeah, I mean, we could at least do to put, all those crystal glyphs that you fire at, they should have at least, made, a crystal that looks different from all the others, that gives you a checkpoint in the middle of the game. In the level, I mean, because they expect you to beat some of these levels can take a while, and it takes you many tries to figure out where you're even supposed to be goddamn going in these.
And some of them, for sure. And so what happens is if you lose an Ecco, you go back to the start of the stage. To the game's credit, you get a password for every level, and you also have unlimited lives, so it doesn't waste your time with lives, which I feel like that was clearly they understood something about what they were making.
But they did that on purpose because they knew you'd be dying a jillion goddamn times over. I don't know if I really approve of that.
In a sense, it's a very forward-thinking aspect to the game, because nowadays, when people even make classic style games, lives almost never factor into it anymore because it's just not necessary. It's a holdover from the arcade days, and those are gone forever.
Yeah, it would have been
I find interesting that they clearly must have made the choice, and they went, all right, well, we can put in lives, or we can make the game harder so people can't just blaze through it quickly. I think it's an interesting choice. But what's interesting thing about Ecco is I did mention that there were multiple versions. What actually happened was that the Japanese took one look at this game, went, nope, too hard. And they shoved in checkpoints in the Japanese version of the game.
So do you think that's the best way to play the game?
Yeah, more or less. So what they did was, I think it is actually that when you use the crystals, I think that acts as a checkpoint in the Japanese version. I can't remember the exact details on it, but that does exist. And they added a extra little micro stage in the end boss of the game. So it was not necessarily easier, but it alters it slightly. And in a interesting side thing, when the Sega CD, Mega CD version was released everywhere, it actually used the checkpointing system from the Japanese game. So most versions of the game after the Mega Drive version are actually utilize checkpoint systems, except if they're based on the Mega Drive version, like, so they're exact, emulated ports or whatever. They don't have checkpoints. That brings me finally, and I'm only saying this in case someone wants to play Ecco, because you should play Ecco, is that the Nintendo 3DS remake, reboot, port of Ecco, fantastic little line of Sega games if you have a 3DS, all the 3DS classics. They actually combined the Western Mega Drive Genesis release with the Japanese release, so that you now can play, the game in the, Western releases with the Japanese checkpoints. And they included, because I guess they really wanted to make sure the game was finishable by everyone, they included a Super Dolphin mode, which makes you, I think, invulnerable and may or may not take out the oxygen, so it turns the game into a much, much easier experience, which is, it's an interesting thing for them to have done. So basically everyone after the original release was like, all right, we'll make it easier, calm down.
Well, Cal, I will say you definitely hosed me. That's something I feel I should have researched more in advance, but
no,
nice...
your point is valid for the very original release of this game, which
is...
we're
judging the original release here, and
well,
I think
more or less.
Difficulty is way too easy.
And the difficulty is out there, and this was most likely, look, most people that played Ecco would have almost certainly played the original Genesis Mega Drive release. Like, that is the version we all played.
Yeah, like you said, that's what gets into emulators, like the Sonic's Genesis collection or whatever it was on the PS3. Unfortunately, that was the version it was based off of, and that's primarily how I actually got to know Ecco.
Did that have save states? I know some of the...
well, yeah, it has your own custom save states, but, I guess in a gamer's sense, that's not considered germane to actually playing the game. I mean...
I don't think using save states in Ecco is a bad thing. If this game has a flaw, and that would be that it can get way too hard, especially Welcome to the Machine, which not only is an extremely hard level, but is pretty absolutely horrifying, just in terms of, again, the atmosphere, where you're suddenly thrown into a biomechanical machine while this extremely abstract track just starts wailing at you, and the xenomorph from Aliens just hounds the shit out of this little dolphin. What a game, I think. Sounds
like something out of a creepypasta. Hey, I do wonder, though, if you could sync Pink Floyd's Welcome to the Machine with the duration of the level. And if you could beat it, I wonder if it syncs up pretty well. I mean, well, I don't know. It's a theory to try. If you could beat the damn thing. But I was not able to without plopping in a lot of saves.
Where do we want to rank it?
Well... I'm going to make sure it doesn't get as high as you guys want to put it. I'm sorry to play the heel, but we do have to consider that the difficulty of some games can be just really oppressive to how enjoyable they are. And while I will grant credit to later releases of Ecco, reducing the difficulty, at least with the checkpoints, since we're judging the original release here, I gotta say, I would vote it down like you guys voted down Ninja Gaiden for that being too hard.
I would be careful, because heavily atmospheric game that's too hard sounds like a certain Souls series, am I right?
Dude, what the fuck? Those aren't even comparable. That's a really petty comparison. I don't see how those equate to each other. I mean, just because you don't like Souls and I don't like Ecco doesn't mean that we have to be jabbing at each other.
Well, it's actually interesting, because we do... I dislike Souls games to an extent, and you dislike Ecco, but I do think that there's a lot of similarities between the two games, which I find interesting precedent.
You can gouge away.
Gouge, yeah. Well, let's look at all right. Well, where did we put Sonic 3 and Knuckles? Because we mentioned that one already. So
that's number 15, I believe.
That was placed at position, currently position 12 was where we put Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I would say that, yeah, Ecco's probably, its difficulty does let it down, in terms of a general audience, so I probably wouldn't put it quite as high up there, since it is rough-edged. I think that it being as hard as it is, sells its atmosphere quite well. You really feel quite, vulnerable in the game, and it does...
Well, I'll give it that,
yeah.
But atmosphere versus actually having fun... I pay attention to the latter more often. I know I'm being a dick here, but I don't know. I can only partially see why Ecco's such a big deal, but I didn't grow up with it. I have no nostalgic attachment to this one, so I admit, maybe I'm not the best one to speak about this. I'm just telling it as I see it, and even if the difficulty's been dulled down in later releases, I still don't really like how it controls, and that's something that can't really be inherently fixed.
It can't be inherently fixed because it is pretty much one of the primo reasons that Ecco the Dolphin is an interesting game. You know,
Well, once again, innovation weighed versus practicality. It depends on what you're looking for in a game. I don't know. Here, I don't want to be, like, totally harsh on the game. Like, I know it does have a lot of fans, but, like, you take a placement and I'll see what it weighs against what I'm thinking.
Well, let me have a look. I probably wouldn't put it above Chrono Trigger as much as I would maybe prefer Ecco to Chrono Trigger, but I am looking somewhere around there for Ecco because that's how I feel about Ecco. I think I've made that reasonably clear. But I know Bob and Xerxes have been quiet, sitting back there tweeting.
No, I mean I see what you're saying about Chrono Trigger. I would put Ecco above Chrono Trigger, and I like Chrono Trigger more personally. But because this is a scientifically accurate, 100% objective survey here,
Ecco is more
Ecco is better because it innovates so much more. Like the main thing about Chrono Trigger is it's just like a JRPG that's not totally cruel to the player. But
which really counts, so I would agree with that.
I mean, that's one of the things that really sets this game above, is that when you try and fix this game, I feel like you try and fix it by making it more like a very modern game, which is interesting to me, because it's like, this game is so different and forward in its sort of focus, that it's like, okay, well, to fix this, let's make it even more different. It's like, wow, that's what you need to do to this?
You can't divorce this game from its context. There was nothing like it then. There's pretty much nothing like it now. It is, yeah, maybe too hard, but it's pretty much the only Ecco game except for the other Ecco games. And
I'd probably say this is the best Ecco game, because 2, Tides of Time, is definitely too hard. That game is, like, let's make it a bit harder. And it's like, guys, slow down here. It doesn't have to be, no, let's make it even harder. Please don't make it harder.
Tides of Time looks even nicer than the first, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. It's,
Ecco Junior. There's a game called Ecco Junior. Is that for kids, or is it just as hard?
Pretty much, yeah.
It is actually Mr. There's no way I'm going to pronounce his last name, but
Ed Annunziata?
Yeah, thank you. He basically said, I wanted to make an Ecco game for, I think it was his kid, maybe his daughter, to play, so that's why he made Ecco Junior. He wanted to make a much sort of easier to approach experience in the Ecco world.
I feel like this kind of, this just shows you how much there was left to do with the whole, like, 2D, side-scrolling type gameplay. There was other territory to be explored, and it really wasn't. It was just left to you like, oh, more mascot platformers. Here's Bubsy. Here's like Arrow, the diabetic acrobat bat, and all that. I might have gotten that a little bit wrong, but they just didn't reach far enough, and Ecco did. Ecco, and for me, it's oddly enough always associated with Colibri, the best hummingbird-based shooter on the 32X.
Well, it's the same development team, right?
Right. So, I mean, that's just the idea. It's like something, let's do something crazy and artistic and fun and very, very 90s, very, like, new age type thing.
Well, although this game isn't strictly speaking Sega, it does have that thing that we sort of felt that Sega delivered, which is when they're like, forget normal games, we're just going to make something and it's going to be
Sega of America delivered, in particular.
Yes.
I think you guys are maybe jacking the game off a little bit too much. Look, I'm trying to be fair and place it at a point that we can all agree with, but where I'm going to put it is not where you guys would want me to put it. And, it's already kind of pissing me off just thinking about it. But I'm going to take a page from what Cal said, and this is me being as merciful as I possibly can. If we're comparing it to Demon's Souls, sure, I'll place it above Demon's Souls. Right above it. I'll place Ecco between Yoshi's Island and Demon's Souls as my personal recommendation. But you guys probably aren't going to agree with that. So.
I agree with it.
You do? Really?
Yeah.
Shit, maybe I should have lowballed it some more.
You should have, but you didn't.
Wow, wait, I actually...
No, too late. Moving on. That's 2 votes.
Oh, fuck me. What did I do
Can
here?
we put it above Yoshi's Island? Can we just put it above Yoshi's Island?
I would even put it above Yoshi's Island. I agree. So
Okay.
you're still locked into your vote, Sotenga. Don't even try.
Okay, I'll give you that. I just was hoping that you guys wouldn't want to place it above the likes of Space Harrier or Windjammers or Turrican. I really like those games.
I don't like putting anything above Space Harrier. You have to understand that. I only put
Okay,
games above Space
we can
Harrier
at least
because
agree
I
on
have to.
that. Look, guys, I was going to place it much lower. I was going to place it between Little Samson and Dead or Alive
late.
3 originally.
Too late.
I was just
late.
saying. I just want to say I can
Hey,
see
make
the
your choice and live
upsides.
with it, dude.
No. I want to end this off on a good note. For as pissed off as I've been playing the heel, and I really do think Echo is overrated on a personal level, I do have to objectively admit the game does have a lot of fans, and its atmospheric merits are really impressive, not just for the Genesis, but for any video game. So even if I really don't like it, I grudgingly respect it, and was probably the closest thing. I don't know, Echo was maybe like the closest second best mascot that Sega had below Sonic. So, I'll give him that.
He's
There I
like
have
the
it.
non-mascot mascot. He's like the planet Earth's mascot. I mean, but the thing is, like, here's the thing about Echo. I find I playing the game, it makes me just want to pull what's left of my hair out.
Yeah.
It is very frustrating, but the thing is like, I want more games like this. I want more people who are trying
I do
to
too. I want games that are like this, but
Crazy
are actually
different.
playable. But
But it is playable. It's hard, but it's not. Once you master it, it's not that long. It's hard in the classic sense of retro games. It's
I mean,
it's just
barring a
hard.
few erroneous levels, most of I think its difficulty is just it demands that you be, pretty on the ball with the game. It's not as many cheap shots. So is it going above Yoshi's Island? Is that...
Okay,
Can we
between
put it
Yoshi,
just one above Yoshi's Island. How
between
about that?
Space Harrier and Yoshi's Island, but I'm glad
Yeah,
you
that's
guys
what-
agree. Do not place it above Space Harrier. We have to draw the line somewhere. That'd be realistic.
Well, it doesn't have any like Cyclops mammoths, so
That is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, although the thing though with Echo is that it has a really, really high wall of entry, I think, for most people to appreciate. But, if you stick with it, and I haven't been playing Echo as long as you guys have, but if I had, maybe I'd see things on a better wavelength since you do.
Everyone who wants to play Echo, get the 3DS version. It has
Yeah.
so many options, and you can even turn on invulnerable Super Dolphin mode. You cannot go wrong with
Yeah.
that version of the game.
I will say-
anything called Super Dolphin mode gets my vote.